Welcome to True Crime Mysteries, where we investigate cases that stumped investigators for years. Today, we're exploring one of the most disturbing and enduring puzzles in American criminal history. A killer who didn't just commit murders. He announced them, he taunted police, he sent codes that took decades to crack, and then, as suddenly as he appeared, he went silent. Here's what happened. For more than 50 years, a killer who called himself the Zodiac has haunted the San Francisco Bay Area and the American imagination. He murdered at least 5 people. He wounded 2 more who survived. He wrote letters to newspapers demanding they print his words, or he promised to kill again. He sent cryptograms so complex that one of them wasn't solved until the year 2020. 51 years after it was written. And 2 of his ciphers remain unbroken to this day. Multiple law enforcement agencies, including the San Francisco Police Department, the California Department of Justice, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, have worked this case across generations of investigators. None of them have been able to name a killer in a court of law. The question that has haunted detectives, journalists, amateur codebreakers, and true crime researchers for over half a century is this: who was the Zodiac, and why, after at least 5 confirmed murders and a national media storm, did he simply stop? Or did he? Those questions don't have simple answers. But if we trace the evidence carefully, walking through the attacks, the letters, the ciphers, the investigation, and the suspects, we come as close to the truth as the public record allows. And along the way, we see something bigger than one unsolved case. We see the moment American crime changed forever. The moment a killer figured out that media could be a weapon. And that the public, once terrified, might also become an audience. Let's go back to the beginning. Context. A Bay Area mystery. To understand the Zodiac case, you need to understand the world it emerged from. The late 1960s in the San Francisco Bay Area was a place in the middle of extraordinary transformation. The summer of love had come and gone. The counterculture had bloomed in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district and then fractured. The region was experiencing rapid population growth, economic expansion, and deep social tension. Protests, political assassinations, and cultural upheaval were shaping the country in real time. And in the middle of all of that, in the quiet suburban towns and rural roads that stretched east and north of San Francisco, something dark was beginning. The Bay Area in 1968 and 1969 was not a single unified jurisdiction. It was a patchwork of cities, counties, and unincorporated areas, each with its own police department, its own sheriff, its own protocols. There was no shared database. No centralized communication system linking Benicia to Vallejo to Napa County to San Francisco. When crimes occurred across those boundaries, investigators in different departments might not even know about each other's cases for days or weeks. That fragmentation would become critically important to this story. The confirmed attacks occurred across 4 locations: the city of Benicia in Solano County, the city of Vallejo, unincorporated Napa County, and the city and county of San Francisco. Each attack fell under a different agency's jurisdiction: the Vallejo Police Department, the Solano County Sheriff's Office, the Napa County Sheriff's Office, and the San Francisco Police Department. And eventually, the California Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation would join the effort. This is the world the Zodiac entered. A region of 5 million people, divided by geography and bureaucracy, connected by newspapers that millions of residents read every morning over coffee. He understood that infrastructure perfectly. And he used it. Beat 1. The Bay Area attacks, December 1968 through October 1969. The first confirmed attack attributed to the Zodiac occurred in December of 1968 in Benicia, California, a small city on the northern shore of the Carquinez Strait in Solano County. A young couple was found shot near their car on a remote road. Neither survived. They were teenagers, out together on a winter evening, in a place that must have felt safe. It did not protect them. I want to be deliberate here about how we discuss these victims throughout this episode. This case has been covered in media for decades, and too often the victims have been reduced to data points in a puzzle. They were real people. They had families, futures, and lives that mattered far beyond their connection to this case. Their names are part of the public record, drawn from years of documented news coverage and official case files, and they deserve to be remembered as people, not as statistics. We will honor that throughout this video. At the time of that first attack, local investigators in Benicia and Solano County handled it as a double homicide. Tragic, devastating, but not yet connected to a pattern, because there was no pattern yet. That would change in the summer of 1969. In July of 1969, a second attack occurred near Vallejo, California. Again, a couple was targeted at a remote location, late at night. Again, a firearm was used. In this attack, one of the two victims survived, though critically wounded. That surviving victim would become one of the most important witnesses in the entire investigation. What that survivor described to investigators, including physical details about the attacker, would shape the official composite sketch that became one of the most widely circulated images in American crime reporting. Following that July attack, an unusual phone call was placed to the Vallejo Police Department. According to public records and contemporaneous news coverage, a male voice called in to report the shooting and to claim credit for a prior killing, referencing the December 1968 attack in Benicia. The caller, based on public accounts documented in the Vallejo Police Department's records, provided information that had not been released to the public. That call was the first indication investigators had that these attacks might be connected. And it was the first time the perpetrator reached out directly to law enforcement. It would not be the last. In August of 1969, the third attack occurred. This time at Lake Berryessa in unincorporated Napa County. Two people were attacked in a wooded area near the lake on an afternoon in late summer. The method of attack in this case was different from the prior incidents, a detail noted in the Napa County Sheriff's Office investigation and reported widely in contemporary news coverage. One of the two victims at Lake Berryessa survived. That second surviving witness provided additional descriptions that law enforcement would use to build out the investigation. At Lake Berryessa, the attacker reportedly wore a distinctive costume or disguise. Witness accounts, documented in the Napa County investigation, described a dark hooded garment with a symbol drawn on the chest. That symbol, a circle bisected by a cross, resembling a gun sight, would become one of the most recognizable images of the entire case. It would appear again on the letters. It would become the signature that newspapers and investigators associated with the perpetrator who would eventually name himself the Zodiac. The fourth confirmed attack came in October of 1969 in the city of San Francisco itself. A cab driver was shot and killed in the Presidio Heights neighborhood. According to public records and the San Francisco Police Department's investigation, a piece of the victim's shirt was cut away after the attack. That piece of fabric would appear later in one of the killer's letters to a newspaper, enclosed as what seemed to be a gruesome proof of claim. It was a detail known only to investigators at the time. And when it appeared in the mail, it confirmed what authorities were beginning to understand. This was the same perpetrator. And he was communicating. The cab driver attack also produced the most detailed witness accounts in the San Francisco phase of the investigation. Multiple witnesses in the Presidio Heights area reported seeing a man near the scene. Their descriptions were compiled by the SFPD into a composite sketch that was published in newspapers across the Bay Area and eventually the country. That composite, showing a heavy-set white male with glasses and a crew cut, became one of the iconic images of American true crime history. It has appeared in documentaries, books, academic studies, and news coverage for more than 5 decades. And it has never led to a confirmed identification. Let's take a step back and look at the full picture of what investigators were dealing with by the fall of 1969. 5 people had been killed in 4 separate attacks, across 3 separate counties and 1 major city. 2 people had survived. The attacks had occurred over a span of roughly 10 months, from December 1968 through October 1969. The jurisdictions involved included the Vallejo Police Department, the Solano County Sheriff's Office, the Napa County Sheriff's Office, and the San Francisco Police Department. Each agency had its own files, its own chain of evidence, its own investigators, and in 1969, coordinating across those jurisdictions meant phone calls and physical mailings, not instant digital transfers. The perpetrator, whether by design or fortune, had chosen geography as a tool. The fragmented jurisdiction created fragmented investigation. It was only when the letters started arriving that the connections became impossible to deny. Here's a question worth sitting with as we move into the next part of this story. The attacks stopped, at least as confirmed attacks, after October 1969. But the letters continued for years. Why would someone stop killing but keep writing? Was it because the killing was never really the point? Drop your theory in the comments. Because what comes next raises that question in a very serious way. Beat 2. The Letters and the Ciphers. On the 1st of August, 1969, 3 Bay Area newspapers received nearly identical letters in the mail. the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald. Each letter claimed responsibility for the Benicia attack in December 1968 and the Vallejo attack in July 1969. Each letter included details about those attacks that investigators had not released to the public. And each letter came with something extra: a section of a cryptogram, a coded cipher, one piece of a three-part puzzle, divided across the three letters, which together formed a complete message. The writer demanded that newspapers publish his letters on their front pages. And he warned that if they didn't, he would go on a killing rampage. The newspapers faced an agonizing dilemma: publish the letters, and you become a platform for a killer, potentially encouraging further communication or even further violence. Don't publish, and risk ignoring what might be a genuine threat to public safety. Both the Chronicle and the Examiner, working with law enforcement, ultimately chose to publish. The reasoning, documented in news archives from that period, was that withholding the letters might provoke the very violence the writer was threatening. It was a decision that set a precedent for how media handles communications from suspected offenders, a precedent still debated in journalism and criminology today. Those first three letters established the pattern. The writer claimed credit, he included proof, he made demands, he threatened consequences, and he made clear that he enjoyed the communication itself. The letters were not just confessions. They were performances. A follow-up letter arrived at the San Francisco Examiner later in August of 1969. In it, the writer signed for the first time with a symbol. That circle bisected by a cross. The same symbol described by witnesses at Lake Berryessa. And he gave himself a name. He signed the letter. "This is the Zodiac speaking." That phrase would open nearly every subsequent letter. It became as recognizable as any tagline in criminal history. The letters kept coming through 1969, 1970, 1971, and into the early 1970s. The San Francisco Chronicle was the primary recipient, though other papers and at least one television station also received correspondence. The letters ranged in content from boastful claims of additional murders to apparent personal grievances to what seemed like riddles and taunts directed at police. Some letters included diagrams, some included cut-out pieces from greeting cards. One included what appeared to be a piece of the cab driver's shirt, cut from the victim's clothing after the October 1969 San Francisco attack. That detail, confirmed by investigators as documented in public records, was the most visceral and deliberate proof of authenticity the writer ever sent. It was calculated, it was cold, and it worked. Investigators confirmed the fabric matched. Now let's talk about the ciphers. Because the cryptograms the Zodiac sent are, in many ways, the most enduring element of the entire case. They transformed the investigation into something almost unprecedented in criminal history. A puzzle that the entire country was invited to solve. In those first August 1969 letters, each newspaper received 1/3 of a cipher. When assembled, the three-part cryptogram contained 408 characters. It is known in the case record as the 408 cipher, or sometimes called the three-part cipher. The writer claimed, in his cover letters, that the cipher contained his identity. Investigators and codebreakers went to work immediately. So did the public. The 408 cipher was solved just over a week after it was published. Not by a government agency. Not by a professional codebreaker. But by a high school history teacher from Salinas, California, named Donald Hardin, and his wife, Betty Hardin. Working together, using patterns and frequency analysis and the kinds of handwritten notes that filled their kitchen table, they cracked the cipher in less than 2 days. Their solution was submitted to the San Francisco Chronicle and confirmed by cryptologists. The decoded message, which is part of the public record and has been widely published, revealed a taunting statement about the killer's enjoyment of the murders and his belief that the people he killed would be his slaves in the afterlife. The message was chilling, but it did not contain his identity, as the writer had claimed it would. It was a deception, or perhaps a joke. Either way, it was another layer of performance. The second cipher sent by the Zodiac is known as the 340 cipher. It arrived at the San Francisco Chronicle in November of 1969, enclosed with one of his letters. At 340 characters, it was shorter than the first. But it was vastly more complex. It defeated professional cryptanalysts, law enforcement codebreakers, and generations of amateur researchers for more than 50 years. Then, in December of 2020, an announcement stunned the true crime community and made international news. The 340 cipher had been solved, not by a government agency, but by a team of 3 amateur codebreakers working independently across 3 countries. David Faraday, an American software developer. Jarl van Eyck, a Belgian programmer. And Sam Blake, an Australian mathematician. Using modern computing tools and a new approach to the cipher's structure, including the discovery that the text read in a pattern that was neither fully horizontal nor fully vertical but used a rearrangement technique, they unlocked the message after years of collaborative effort. Their solution was submitted to the FBI, which confirmed it. The decrypted message, now part of the public record, again did not reveal the killer's identity. It was another statement of taunting defiance directed at investigators. But cracking it was a landmark achievement, and it renewed global interest in the two ciphers that still remain unsolved. Those two remaining ciphers, known as the 13 cipher and the 32 cipher based on their character counts, have never been successfully decoded as of the public record available at the time of this video. The 13 cipher arrived with a letter claiming it contained the killer's identity. Various proposed solutions have been offered by researchers over the decades, but none have been confirmed by law enforcement or independent cryptologists. The 32 cipher, included in a 1970 letter that also contained a piece of a map and directions that the writer claimed would lead to a bomb, has similarly resisted all confirmed decryption attempts. Whether either cipher genuinely contains the killer's name, as the writer claimed, or whether they are simply more taunts and deceptions remains unknown. Here is where I want to ask you something directly. Two ciphers remain unsolved after more than 50 years. Modern computing cracked the 340 after half a century. If you were going to design a research approach to the 13 cipher and the 32 cipher today, using every tool available to a determined amateur in the digital age, where would you start? Seriously, drop your thoughts in the comments. Because people in this community have contributed meaningful research before, the 2020 solution came from amateurs. That matters. The final known letter attributed to the Zodiac was received by the San Francisco Chronicle in January of 1974. It arrived nearly 4 years after the previous confirmed correspondence. In it, the writer referenced a film that had recently been released, The Exorcist, and in typically oblique fashion, offered what appeared to be a continuing commentary on his crimes and his relationship with the press. Most significantly, and most controversially, the writer in that 1974 letter claimed a total of 37 victims. That claim has never been substantiated by law enforcement. The confirmed victim count, based on official investigative records, remained at 5 killed and 2 wounded. The additional claimed victims were never connected to the Zodiac by investigators from any of the agencies working the case. Whether that 37 victim claim was a boast, a fabrication, a misdirection, or something else entirely is one of the many questions this case has left permanently open. After 1974, the letters stopped. There were no further confirmed communications. The man who had spent 5 years writing to newspapers, threatening cities, sending ciphers, and inserting himself into the national conversation simply went quiet. And has never been heard from since, at least not in any communication that has been authenticated by law enforcement. What the letters accomplished, beyond the obvious terror and manipulation, was to completely reshape the case. The Zodiac was no longer just a murder investigation. He had made it into a media event, a puzzle, a performance, and in doing so, he had created something that criminologists and media scholars have studied ever since. The template of the communicating killer. The offender who uses media to control the story. Who makes the investigation public by making himself public. Who converts fear into spectacle. That pattern has appeared in cases in the decades since. Some criminologists trace its modern origins directly to the Zodiac. Beat 3. The investigation, the suspect, and the modern era. Investigating the Zodiac case was, from the beginning, an exercise in managing complexity. Multiple agencies, multiple crime scenes, multiple evidence chains, and a perpetrator who seemed deliberately designed to resist identification. By the end of 1969, the agencies formally involved in the investigation included the San Francisco Police Department, the Vallejo Police Department, the Napa County Sheriff's Office, and the Solano County Sheriff's Office. The California Department of Justice became involved in a coordinating capacity, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation opened a case file. The FBI's involvement, based on public records, was primarily analytical in the early years, focused on the handwriting analysis, the cryptography, and the behavioral profiling of the unknown writer. For decades, the investigation was marked by both intense effort and, at times, significant communication gaps between the agencies involved. In the pre-digital era, that was not unusual. But in a case defined by cross-jurisdictional crimes, it created real obstacles. The physical evidence collected across the 4 crime scenes included fingerprint evidence, shell casings, witness statements, the letters themselves, and handwriting samples. The letters were analyzed extensively. The handwriting, the paper, the stamps, the envelopes, the ink, all became subjects of forensic examination. Testing for fingerprints and, later, for DNA material from where stamps and envelopes had been licked was conducted. Results from those examinations have been discussed in public records and media over the decades, with varying and at times conflicting accounts from different agencies. No DNA profile developed from the evidence has been matched to an identified individual as of public record. Investigators developed a substantial suspect pool over the years. Hundreds of individuals were examined over the course of the investigation, according to accounts documented in news archives and official public statements. But the investigation ultimately centered, in its most publicly documented phase, on one person. Arthur Lee Allen. Allen, who died in 1992, was a resident of Vallejo, California. He was a former elementary school teacher who had been convicted of a sex offense prior to becoming a focus of the Zodiac investigation. He is the only suspect ever publicly named by police in connection with the Zodiac case. According to public records, he was never charged with any crime related to the Zodiac murders. Under the law, he is presumed innocent of those crimes. And we will treat him as such. What we can discuss is the public record of why investigators focused on him. That record, drawn from publicly available statements by investigators, court documents related to searches of Allen's property, and news coverage of the investigation, describes a series of circumstantial connections that attracted and sustained law enforcement interest. Those connections have been described in public by investigators including then Vallejo Police Department Detective George Bawart, and by former San Francisco Police Department Inspector Dave Toshi, both of whom are referenced in decades of news coverage. Inspector Toshi, whose work on the Zodiac case made him one of the most recognized detectives in San Francisco history, worked the case from the SFPD side for years. His name appears throughout the historical record. Investigators conducted searches of Allen's property, including a residence and a trailer, over the years. Those searches are documented in public court records. Items of potential evidentiary interest were recovered, but no charges resulted. Allen was questioned by investigators multiple times. He denied involvement consistently. He died in August of 1992 of natural causes. After his death, investigators reportedly submitted items from Allen for DNA and fingerprint comparison against the evidence from the Zodiac correspondence. As of the public record, those comparisons did not produce a confirmed match. California Department of Justice officials made public statements in the years following Allen's death indicating that the available evidence did not confirm his identity as the Zodiac. The case remained open. Let me be absolutely direct about what that means. Arthur Lee Allen died without being charged, without being convicted, and without being confirmed as the Zodiac Killer by any law enforcement agency or court. The public record is clear on this. He is not the confirmed identity of the Zodiac. He is a person investigators focused on, as documented in public records, and who the available evidence, also as documented, did not ultimately connect to the crimes beyond the circumstantial. That is where the public record leaves it. The case took a significant institutional turn in 2004, when the San Francisco Police Department officially marked the Zodiac file as inactive. That decision drew criticism from investigators, victim advocates, and the public. It was short-lived. In 2006, the SFPD reopened the case. In a public statement documented in news coverage from that period, the department indicated renewed investigative interest in light of advances in forensic technology. Simultaneously, the California Department of Justice, the FBI, and the county agencies in Napa and Solano have maintained the case's status as open, without interruption, throughout the entire period since the original attacks. As of the publicly available information at the time of this video, the Zodiac case remains an active, open investigation across multiple agencies. Here is the question that sits at the center of the modern investigation, and I want to put it directly to you. We now have genetic genealogy. The same technology that identified the Golden State Killer in 2018 through DNA uploaded to public genealogy databases. We have the letters. We have envelopes. We have stamps. We potentially have DNA material from those items that has been preserved for more than 50 years. Does that avenue, genetic genealogy applied to whatever biological material exists in the Zodiac evidence, represent the most realistic path to a confirmed identification? Or do you think the evidence has degraded beyond the point where that's viable? Tell me what you think in the comments. This is genuinely one of the most important open methodological questions in this case right now, and the community's thinking on it is worth discussing. The rise of the internet transformed the Zodiac investigation in ways that would have been impossible to predict in 1969. Online research communities dedicated to the case emerged in the 1990s and grew exponentially through the 2000s and 2010s. Thousands of amateur researchers from dozens of countries have analyzed the letters, the ciphers, the composite sketches, the crime scene geography, and the behavioral patterns of the unknown writer. That community produced real results. The 2020 solution to the 340 cipher came directly from amateur researchers using modern computing tools and collaborative methods that no single government agency had replicated in 50 years. That is a remarkable fact about this case. It is also, perhaps, the most hopeful one. Because it demonstrates that the Zodiac's codes are not impenetrable. They are solvable. It just took the right combination of tools and minds and time. Modern forensic science has opened other avenues as well. Advances in handwriting analysis, in document examination, in paper and ink dating, and in digital imaging of degraded physical evidence have all been discussed in connection with this case by researchers and former investigators in news coverage and academic literature. The Zodiac letters, preserved in archives and in law enforcement custody, represent a body of physical evidence that is more accessible to modern analysis than at any prior point in the investigation. Whether that analysis will yield a confirmed identification is an open question. But the tools available today are categorically more powerful than anything investigators had in 1969, 1979, or even 1999. There is also the matter of the two unsolved ciphers. The 13 cipher and the 32 cipher remain unbroken. The 2020 success with the 340 demonstrated that applying new computational approaches to these ciphers is not futile. Several research teams have publicly announced renewed efforts on the remaining two since the 340 was solved. Whether either cipher truly contains, as the writer claimed in some of his letters, a name or identifying information, or whether they are simply more misdirection, remains to be seen. But the possibility is real. And it keeps the research community engaged. It is worth stepping back for a moment to consider what this case has meant beyond the investigation itself. The Zodiac became a cultural touchstone in ways that exceed almost any other unsolved American criminal case. Books, films, documentaries, academic papers, podcasts, and online archives have been devoted to it. David Fincher's 2007 film Zodiac, based on the research of author Robert Graysmith, brought the case to a new generation with a level of documentary detail unusual for a Hollywood production. That film itself is based on books written about the case, which in turn draw from public records, news archives, and interviews with investigators. The case has been the subject of criminology courses, cryptography studies, and journalism ethics discussions. Its influence on how media covers violent crime, how police communicate with the public during active investigations, and how the public perceives unsolved cases is genuinely substantial. There is something else the Zodiac case introduced that deserves serious attention. It created the archetype of what criminologists sometimes call the performing killer. The offender who is not satisfied with the act alone, but who requires an audience. Who uses media as a stage. Who understands that letters to newspapers, coded messages, and provocative claims create a form of notoriety that the act of violence alone cannot sustain. The Zodiac appeared to understand, perhaps before most law enforcement agencies did, that in the modern media environment, communication was power. That sending a letter was a form of control. That making investigators publicly react to your words gave you leverage that operating in silence never could. That insight, if it can be called that, is as disturbing as anything else about this case. And its echoes appear in cases studied by behavioral analysts and criminologists in the decades since. The families of the confirmed victims have lived with this case for more than 50 years. The absence of a conclusive answer, of an arrest, of a trial, of an accounting, is not merely an academic or historical frustration. It is a lived weight carried by real people whose loved ones were taken from them in the late 1960s, when the Bay Area was changing and the nights were long and a killer was choosing remote roads and quiet lakeshores. The case is not a puzzle for them. It is an ongoing absence. And that is the dimension of the Zodiac case that gets lost most easily in the fascination with the ciphers and the letters and the theories. Behind every data point in this investigation, there is a person. And a family. And a grief that 50 years of unanswered questions has not diminished. Resolution. An open case. So where does the Zodiac case stand today? The honest answer is, officially open, practically stalled, but not without hope. The San Francisco Police Department, which marked the case inactive in 2004 and reopened it in 2006, continues to list it as an active investigation. The California Department of Justice maintains an open file. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has an active case record. The Napa County Sheriff's Office and the Solano County Sheriff's Office have never closed their respective portions of the investigation. These are not symbolic gestures. They represent ongoing legal and investigative commitments to a resolution that has not yet arrived. Arthur Lee Allen, the only suspect ever publicly named by police, died in 1992 without being charged. He is presumed innocent. No other individual has been publicly named as a suspect by any of the investigating agencies. The online research community has proposed dozens of alternative suspects over the years, some with elaborate supporting arguments. None of those proposals have resulted in confirmed identifications or charges. The question of the Zodiac's identity remains, in the most literal sense, open. The two unsolved ciphers sit in archives, in digital reproductions, in the hands and the hard drives of researchers around the world. The 2020 solution to the 340 proved that progress is still possible. It is not inevitable, but it is possible, and for a case that has been generating theories and dead ends for more than 5 decades, the possibility of progress is meaningful. Advances in genetic genealogy, the technology that identified the Golden State Killer Joseph James DeAngelo after decades of investigation, have changed what cold case work can achieve. If usable biological material can be extracted from the Zodiac letters and envelopes, and if a DNA profile can be built from that material, then a genealogical search through public databases might be able to narrow the identity to a family, a region, a generation. That is not a guarantee. The physical evidence is more than 50 years old. Degradation is a real concern. Chain of custody is a real concern. But it is a viable path in a way that it simply was not 20 years ago. The case also has something that very few cold cases have: a global community of dedicated researchers who are genuinely knowledgeable, who are applying real analytical tools, and who have already produced verifiable results. The 2020 Cipher solution is the proof of that. The research community that surrounds this case is not uniformly careful or rigorous. Some of what gets published online about the Zodiac is speculative to the point of irresponsibility. But the serious researchers in this community are doing work that matters. And the infrastructure of shared knowledge, digital archives, decoded letters, and collaborative analysis that exists today is more powerful than anything available to investigators in any prior decade. The most sobering reality of the Zodiac case is also the simplest. If the perpetrator was in his 30s or 40s at the time of the 1968 and 1969 attacks, he would be in his 90s or beyond today. The probability that the actual perpetrator is still living is, at minimum, uncertain. If he is deceased, a posthumous identification through genetic genealogy or document analysis would still be achievable and would still matter enormously, to the historical record, to the families of the victims, and to the integrity of a 50-year investigation. An answer, even a posthumous one, would be meaningful. It would close a chapter that has been open for the entire lifetime of anyone under the age of 60. What the Zodiac case leaves us with, after all the evidence and all the theories and all the years, is a portrait of an investigation defined by what it couldn't do. Multiple agencies couldn't coordinate across jurisdictions in real time. Forensics couldn't extract the identity from the letters. Codebreakers couldn't unlock all 4 ciphers. Investigators couldn't build a prosecutable case against any named suspect. None of that reflects failures of effort or dedication. It reflects the limits of the tools and the information available at any given point in 55 years of genuine investigation. The tools have changed, and that changes what might be possible. 5 people were killed in the Bay Area between December 1968 and October 1969 by an unidentified offender who called himself the Zodiac. 2 people survived attacks by that same individual and lived with the weight of that experience for the rest of their lives. Their courage in giving accounts to investigators was essential to the investigation from the very beginning. A killer sent coded letters to newspapers for 5 years, transforming his crimes into a national media event and creating an archetype of the performing offender that has influenced criminology, journalism, and popular culture ever since. And after 1974, he disappeared. Into silence. Into history. Into an open case file that has never been closed and never been resolved. The Zodiac case is a 55-year-old reminder that some of the most consequential questions don't have answers yet. Not because no one is looking, but because the answers are still, somehow, out of reach. And somewhere in the Bay Area, or in an archive, or in the remaining uncracked ciphers, or in a sample of DNA extracted from a 50-year-old envelope, the answer might be waiting. For the right tool, the right mind, the right moment. Closing. If you have a theory about the Zodiac's identity, the two unsolved ciphers, or what happened after 1974, drop it in the comments below. This community has sharp minds and genuine knowledge, and conversations in the comments on cases like this one are always worth having. We go through every comment, and the best theories get discussed in future episodes. If you want to see more deeply researched cold case investigations, cases that take the evidence seriously and treat the people involved with the respect they deserve, please like this video, subscribe to True Crime Mysteries, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new case. New episodes come out regularly, and we have a long list of cases coming up that deserve this kind of careful attention. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. All information is sourced from public records, court documents, and published news. All persons are presumed innocent unless convicted by a court of law.